Ukraine is actively preparing the Crimean Peninsula where the occupation is. Even diesel fuel has already disappeared from gas stations, and successful attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces on Russian military radars are making it possible to further destroy both the occupiers' fuel and military infrastructure. Next, let's see what awaits the occupiers on the seized peninsula in the near future.
A difficult, prolonged, and exhausting journey lies ahead for all involved. Crimea and Sevastopol are finally returning to their true home harbor, where they belong, and
that harbor is Ukraine. Crimea is being cut off from the Russian Federation, and the collapse of the Crimean bridge is just a matter of time, according to Western publications. There is already a total fuel crisis on the peninsula. Some areas have been left without electricity. There isn't enough air defense even for the most important sites, and those that remain in the confusion are already shooting down their own aircraft.
We note that as a military base, Crimea is becoming more and more inconvenient for Russia, and also because there is no water.
So the past few days have marked a new reality of life on the peninsula. The key event was a series of strikes in the area of Vardiske. After precise hits, the largest oil depot in the area caught fire. According to locals, the burning depot in Vardiske could be seen from the suburbs of Simferopol, with the glow visible for many kilometers. In
Vardiske, there was a strike not only on the oil depot, but also on the military airfield, as well as on the Russian garrison located there.
According to information online, it is reported that an ammunition depot on the garrison's territory was also hit. In addition, the oil depot near Feodosia has also partially ceased operations due to several attacks. Just this month, 11 fuel tanks were completely destroyed, as confirmed by satellite images.
There's a very important story about the Feodosia oil depot. What is it? That it didn't just burn down on its own. It burned down along with the fuel that was stored in those tanks. And that will be very difficult to restore. It's unclear what was stored there, diesel fuel or gasoline. But if it was gasoline, which is most likely, it means that the crisis this week in occupied Crimea will be much worse than it was the week before. So, we wait.
At the same time, each such strike is notable for the fact that it's almost impossible to extinguish the fire. Experts say that the burning fuel spreads across the facility, igniting neighboring tanks. As a result, the fire can last for days.
The landscapes of Feodosia, they practically adorn everything. They say that in the entire eastern part of Crimea, the flames can be seen from 30, and in some places even 50 kilometers away. Everything is burning out, they say. The facility needs to be shut down. This is a recommendation for the occupying Crimean authorities, who have also confirmed that there will be no gasoline.
There will be no diesel either, local authorities add. So, since the beginning of the week, diesel fuel has also disappeared in Crimea, local activists report. With things as they are, the promise by the occupation head of Crimea, Sergei Aksionov, to stabilize the fuel supply situation is simply impossible to fulfill, added Z propagandist Alexander Sergeyev. At the same time, the authorities are desperately trying to hide the real picture of what is happening in Crimea. So, just over the past weekend, police officers drew up at least 4 administrative reports against residents of the peninsula. This was due to posts on social media. People in particular were outraged by the lack of fuel. Interestingly, Russians themselves are partly helping the Ukrainian armed forces to identify targets in Crimea. Experts have analyzed that now you can simply find them by opening maps on the internet.
remember when Yandex.Maps started blurring all sorts of strategic sites? I said that now it's absolutely clear where exactly to strike. So my friends from Inform Napalm noticed that the Special Operations Forces did exactly that. The territory of the oil depot in Vardiske was blurred on Yandex, but for some reason that didn't help against the strikes. Mystical. Once again, thanks to all the Russian decisions that help increase the effectiveness of Ukrainian strikes. Blurring military sites on Yandex maps is definitely one of them.
Another decision that contributes to the regular strikes in Crimea is the work of the defense forces targeting Russian air defense sites on the peninsula. So the day before, the GUR managed to strike the occupiers' newest radar system. We're talking about the Valde complex, which was developed to detect small drones.
The SBU continues to systematically reduce the enemy's military, logistical, and economic capabilities to take action both in occupied Crimea, in other occupied territories, and even on Russian territory itself. But Crimea suffers the most because the air defense system there was deliberately destroyed, reducing their ability to defend themselves. And now we're working as if inside the body. But
By the way, so that the occupiers in Crimea don't get the impression that everything will go back to normal, along with oil depots and military equipment, the AFU hasn't forgotten about the equipment that supplies electricity to Russian bases. In several regions of the peninsula, Ukrainian defenders organized blackouts. In
Crimea, several electrical substations were disabled overnight, and in particular the main power substation in Jankoy, or Jankong as we used to call it in Crimea. So now rolling power outage schedules are being introduced, and here once again Putin is being shown in very concrete terms that if he continues to strike at Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the occupiers in Crimea will be left without electricity and fuel.
And now the cherry on top. During one of the latest attacks, the Russian air defense crews got so nervous that they started firing at everything in sight. As a result, one less Russian fighter jet worth about $50 million.
During a nighttime attack by Ukrainian drones, Russian forces shot down their own Su-30 SM aircraft. This happened right in the area of the Vardiske airfield.
At the same time, there's no good news for the occupiers when it comes to air defense. Analysts note that recently there have been more strikes on Russian territory, prompting the decision to partially redeploy air defense systems from Crimea back to Russia for protection.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
And
Here's another major piece of news. Ukrainian defenders have eliminated more than 50 Russian officers from the elite Senej and Kubinka units, as well as representatives of the main directorate of Russian intelligence and special operations forces. This is a major loss and a blow to enemy forces, as they managed to destroy top-level specialists whose training takes many years. Details in our next report.
More than 3,000 kilometers. That is the current length of the front line between Ukraine and Russia. Of that, nearly 1,000 kilometers are active combat zones. Hundreds of kilometers where Ukrainian defenders break the backbone of an army that was once called the second strongest in the world every day. And every meter of this line is a story of courage, loss, and unbreakable will. At this front line, not only columns of equipment and infantry are being destroyed, but also Russia's military elite. During the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian fighters have eliminated dozens of special forces soldiers from elite units. Senej and Kubinka, those whom even in Russia itself are called the elite of the elite.
Losses of such fighters are especially painful for Russia. Each of them is not an ordinary soldier, but a specialist who has undergone years of training. Training a single such officer takes years and requires significant resources, as noted by I Want to Live.
Recently, a documentary was released to the public about the elimination of a sabotage and reconnaissance group from the Senej Special Purpose Center, which was operating in the Chernihiv region. This operation became one of the most effective since the start of the full-scale war. Ukrainian intelligence officers from the 54th Separate Reconnaissance Battalion, together with border guards from the 105th Prince Volodymyr the Great Detachment, eliminated 6 enemy officers. The bodies of those neutralized as well as weapons and equipment were captured.
Everything that works, they enter Ukrainian territory with their GoPro cameras turned on, and they record all their actions. If you can even call it work. Murder, sabotage, it's essentially terrorism. And they are the first to show this to their, perhaps, commanders or superiors. To report back. That's the first reason. And secondly, they post all of this online to intimidate people. There are videos titled, How I Spent This Summer. And in these videos, there are straight-up montages of the killing of Ukrainians, both soldiers and civilians.
At the center of Sinish and Kubinka are the key units of the Russian Special Operations Forces, reporting directly to the General Staff. It's from there that they select the best of the best. Those who are supposed to carry out the most difficult, covert and dangerous missions. They are trained using Western methods and deployed in operations outside the country, from Ukraine to Africa. But in Ukraine, even such an elite force proved powerless. Those whom Moscow calls invisible fighters become visible on Ukrainian fields. According to the I Want to Live project, during the war, Ukraine has eliminated at least 58 operatives from the Russian Special Operations Forces of the GRU and FSB. For the enemy's army, these are not just losses, it's a blow to the core personnel, to those who were supposed to conduct reconnaissance, coordinate operations, and prepare new acts of sabotage. And while Russian propaganda continues to talk about precision weaponry and the professionalism of its army, the reality is completely different. Across more than 3,000 kilometers of front line, Ukraine is not only holding the line but is also methodically eliminating those whom the Kremlin considers untouchable. And no matter how long Russia continues this aggression, the defense forces will keep giving the same answer. No invader will remain alive on Ukrainian soil.